Hey everybody, we are back with Dr. Sara Gottfried and our good buddy Larry Ostrovsky of Be Well Buzz. Hi everybody.
Hey, yo Larry.
How are you? Thank you for having me.
So good. Yeah. Hi everybody.
Hey, so Larry, just so you guys know, is the kind of co-mastermind of the very popular health website Be Well Buzz with his darling wife, Oksana, and they have a wonderful thing going. They bring tons of health information that's super relevant to people every single day, and so although we could kind of tap him for all kinds of little health pearls, I think we're going to pull a little switcheroo because of a conversation we had earlier and jump into something a little bit more racy. What do you think, Sara?
Hey, I'm always up for a switcheroo. Let's do this.
You're making me nervous.
That's what we want.
Right, exactly. So we want to talk about drugs. And
I get to wear this shirt for a reason.
Yeah, exactly. It's pretty psychedelic. For those of you who are just listening, he's wearing a crazy psychedelic trippy shirt. Oh, and I'm wearing one of Wendy's new shirts, a little Mind Over Matter. We have a whole t-shirt line coming from well.org because I like to empower my team to get creative. And I said, Wendy, it's all yours, run. So yeah, we've had some fun with that. And so,
okay, guys, I've got a green shirt on and there's no branding. So FYI.
Yeah. So
we'll let it slide this time.
Totally. Yeah, so our listeners already know that I'm the brand whore around here anyways. So I want to talk about drugs because this is a conversation you and I, Larry and I, have had a number of times because of Burning Man and all these kind of like new social phenomenon that are out there. And there's a hell of a lot of drug use happening that I certainly have my opinions about, and I think we'll get into it. And then Sara and I were just in New York together this weekend, and the subject was broached a couple times. So I thought, well, who better than Larry, who has really looked into some of this, and I think of all my friends in the business, you know more about this subject because you're passionate about it. Yeah, so sure. First and foremost, let's talk about what's happening, I guess, in the Burning Man kind of sensation and on this kind of resurgence of drugs, and what your opinion of that is.
Well, I don't think it's so much Burning Man. I think Burning Man is a culture that started from people that just, wanted to be free. For me, the journey into, quote unquote drugs, and I think the term drug that meme needs to be explored because it's a term that there's a lot of power and there's a lot of magnetism around it and drama around it because it's like, oh, it's a drug. But what is a drug? Anything that you put into your body could be defined as a drug, right? So whether it's food, whether it's a prescription drug that the pharmaceutical industry gives you, or if it's a plant medicine. So I never thought I would do drugs growing up. I was very much against them, but I always had an open mind. And when I got to college, I ran across some very good teachers and got sort of indoctrinated into plant medicines. And when I started playing around with them and reading, and it wasn't more of like a recreational thing, it was more of a let's get spiritual thing for me. And when I started experimenting with things like psilocybin and LSD, later on DMT and ayahuasca, nothing but amazing things within my psyche and ego dampening happened. And it was very introspective and helped me analyze myself from an outside point of view and helped me get through a lot of inner problems. It helped me understand the world around me better and gave me a perspective on things that I never had before. And it allowed me to expand my consciousness and heal. And this started in like 93, so I've been playing around with these things for a very long time and studying these things, and I see very clearly the power that they have. So right now, the meme that's propagated, drugs are bad. And I want people to recognize the fact that not all drugs are bad. It's your relationship with a substance that could be good or bad. These things are tools. So that's my perspective on the word drug.
This is good, Larry. So I'm hoping maybe we could kick it off with a conversation about cannabis. And I just want to go totally vulnerable here and say that I'm such a square. I mean, we're gonna get into this story that Pedram and I have from New York over the past week where some interesting things went down. Okay, let me just put it that way. And we learned not that this was a big surprise, that Pedram is the permitter and I'm the restrictor. So I want to start first, Larry, with cannabis. Like, tell us what's going on. I mean, there seems to be this revolution happening with looking at, as you described, kind of the ego dampening qualities of plant medicines. And it seems like cannabis is leading the charge. What do you think?
Totally. Well, I think we're in a renaissance of consciousness of sorts, and I think a lot of these things are coming to the surface. And one of those plants, which has been used in pharmacology for many, many years in Chinese medicine, Ayurveda, it's a medicine. It's been in doctors', bags for many years, and it kind of got hijacked, and for various industrial and those types of reasons of business, it got pushed aside. Because industry took precedent over the importance of having this important plant in our lives. And not only is it medicinal, but it's an industrial plant. Hemp could be used for many things, and it could be a commodity. On the healing side of things, cannabis has a wide range of healing properties. It's got a lot of compounds, one of which is CBD, THC, both of which are incredibly medicinal. There are many, many studies now that show their power in healing people from all sorts of ailments, from cancer, on and on and on. So it's coming back, and I think a lot of the reason that it's coming back is because of economics. So there's a little experiment going on in Colorado, and there's a lot of money to be made, and I think that part is being, is playing a part in loosening the restrictions. And what we're going to see is a resurgence of this medicinal plant that helps not only heal the body, but also heal the mind.
What's funny is on my way back from New York, I sat next to this really nice guy who obviously was, a sensible business guy. He lived in Denver, and so me being, who I am, started immediately getting into, punchy subjects.
Oh,
and
what a shocker, Pedram.
What a shocker. I know. It was just like, 30 seconds into it, I'm like, so what about the pot? What's going on? And he was very opinionated because he was saying, look, it's just gotten to the point where the kids are getting a little too emboldened, and they're like, well, now it's legal, and so they're smoking it in the middle of the streets, and it's still, you still got to be 21, right? So there are these problems, but look, I live in Southern Cali, and I mean, this is also where kids are doing pot every day. So kids are going to do pot either way. The question is, what is going to change with this legalization? And, he said, look, there's all these problems. The money's not even going to get back into the school systems because the regulation and the law enforcement is so top heavy. And, I think what we've kind of run into now and what California is waiting for, I saw an interview with Gavin Newsom, who's our lieutenant governor, who's like, look, we're really glad Colorado fell on this sword for us all. We're all going to watch, right? Because there's all sorts of regulatory stuff. I mean, what's the blood level of THC that will determine whether or not you're able to, what's the field test, whether or not you'll be able to drive. And so it is an interesting subject. My opinion about THC, just to be clear, is that, every once in a while when you're hiking with your buddies or something, I'm okay with that. But if you're doing it every day and you're a school-age kid, you're gonna get dumb, right? And so I think that they call it dope for a reason, right? I remember the guys that were always high in high school, and they didn't necessarily have the motivation to get themselves into a position where they're doing things in life, and with the caveat that there are that kind of subset of super neurotic people that do really well on it, and it's great medicine for them.
But it goes back to, again, the relationship with it. Why are you doing it? And I don't think we have a drug problem. I think we have an education problem. And if you think about it, what's the difference between me running to McDonald's and chowing down on a burger that gives me a dopamine response versus me doing a line of cocaine that gives me a similar dopamine response? Right? It's the same chemical reaction. We're driven to that chemical for the same exact reasons, right? Psychologically, we're drawn to that because we want that hit. We want that hit. So it's an education problem. And once we start understanding that those things that we put inside of our body have a chemical response, whether it's food or whether it's a drug. So if you're utilizing these things as a medicine to expand consciousness, to help alleviate a health issue, then you have a good relationship with it. If you're using it to escape, if you're just using it to just get high and just sit around and play video games and you're not an effective member of society, then you need to reassess your situation and understand why you're doing these things. So I think culturally we're programmed to just say no, right? but we don't ask deeper questions because we're pacified by media, and we're programmed to just nod our heads and be like, okay, Big Brother knows best, and no. No, but we really don't know why, and we don't explore why, and it's the same thing. Like these substances are crazy healing, and I give a lot of the shirt is from Joe Rogan, one of his brands, and I've listened to his podcast for a long time, and he's an advocate of doing these things that allow people to break through their shit, whether it's emotional. I mean, I've heard stories of people going to the Amazon, drinking ayahuasca, and literally seeing cancer leave their body, because cancer, a lot of it is emotional, and it's a lot of stuff that's anchored deeply into the psyche. And these things allow you to, it guides you. It has some kind of intelligence that guides you into healing these things and pushing them from the subconscious into the conscious so you could see them, because it's requiring you to open up and energetically be clear. And whatever blocks come up, energetically, usually they're emotional, which lead to cognitive. They come up for you and you're forced to deal with them. And once you're able to clear them, then that no longer has power within your system, and you're able to clear it. And all of a sudden you see that leaving your body, and you're free. And literally people leave these experiences and are healed. Right.
Now, Larry, I love a good roadblock. I am so into this. And I love your point about, I want to make sure I got it right. We don't have a drug problem, we have an education problem. Now, those roadblocks that all of us come up against, I really love yoga and meditation as a way of working with them, and including, intimate relationships. I mean, nothing brings me up against my stuff like being married to the amazing man that I'm married to. Now, L-theanine, that works for me. It helps me with dopamine. I don't have to go to McDonald's or have a line of Coke. But tell me, I agree with this point you made about medical uses of marijuana. It's been used for 3,000 years. There's more than 200 applications of medical marijuana that really help people from, the chemotherapy of cancer to anxiety. Tell me about, how do you look at these plant medicines versus, if we look at the a la carte menu, and we've got my yoga, my meditation, we've got Qigong, we got a Taoist priest here in the room. How do those compare in your mind to these plant medicines?
So all these things are tools, right? And they're all in our chest of things that we can use. I believe meditation, yoga, Qigong, Tai Chi, all those things are incredibly important. And those are daily practices that everyone should be doing. And every once in a while, I think it's important to also pull out the psychedelic tool out of that chest and use it effectively and with purpose. So they're powerful tools to allow us to expand as human beings and be more effective in society and be real with ourselves and the people around us.
Okay, it's time to open the kimono a little bit.
Oh, dear.
So I agree 100% with you, Larry. I think, first of all, there's this war on drugs. And when we're talking about dopaminergic drugs, things that are pushing dopamine and getting us into like that kind of coked up addiction mindset. Yes, I think the food companies have figured that out. The beverage companies, also, the television commercials saying, look, you're not a man enough unless you have this Kawasaki jet ski. If you don't, buy these things, you need to kind of fulfill these impulses. There's this whole class of drugs called the entheogens, which get you closer to God. Okay, they've been used as psychotropic medicines very reverently for thousands, if not tens of thousands of years. I mean, we're finding these things in the bags of shamans in Siberia. We know that the Oracle of Delphi, we know that these things have been common in practice. And these types of medicines are profoundly important in allowing you to, and I was talking to Sara about this at dinner the other night, basically it's a reconciliation between what's actually true in this moment and all the bullshit that's between you and that truth. And it has to shake you back to the truth. And some people feel like they're dying. Some people feel like it's absolutely terrifying. But if you learn to let go, it's extremely powerful. And Sara, this is for you. There's a guy named Stan Groff who was up in your neck of the woods, I don't know if he's passed yet, but he's been around forever. And he was doing a bunch of these experiments in the 60s with LSD, getting amazing psychotherapeutic benefits until basically, it got a little too much and he had to shut it down. And then what he did is he developed a breathing technique called holotropic breathing, which allowed people to get into that same type of mind space and then help them pierce through some of these roadblocks, as you guys said. But done correctly and reverently, I'm a big fan, and I think that it's some of the most powerful medicine out there. Now, if you're going to take a bunch of mushrooms and go to Disneyland, you're an idiot, and that's my opinion. You know what I mean? Like, do it in nature with friends reverently, and you're going to get tremendous benefit.
Yeah, with intention, because set and setting is the whole thing. It's the game. So, what's your frame of mind? What's your intention? And what's the surrounding? What's the setting that you're doing it in? And those things play a major role in whether the experience is going to be an amazing one or, a kind of weird, difficult one. And it's all based on intention. And I think there's different classes of drugs, right? So there's some that reinforce ego, and then there's some that remove ego. And those that reinforce ego are perpetuated in our culture. You got alcohol, you got caffeine, you got cigarettes, you got all these things. Well, cigarettes don't really reinforce ego, but like alcohol absolutely does, right? These other drugs like cocaine, heroin, they reinforce ego. Then you have these other ones that are entheogens that actually remove ego, that make you see yourself clearly, that make you confront yourself, and they dampen ego. And that's where you want to be. You don't want to be in this state of big ego, because it prevents you from being in flow and in a state of love. And that's,
love that, Larry. And so I agree with that piece, that we want to pierce the veil. Like, I totally agree that we want to right size our ego, and most of us need a little help with that one.
Totally.
Now, I also, I'm the square in the bunch here. I haven't done most of these drugs that we're talking about. I don't even think I have the pot gene, to be honest. And I want to bring in ayahuasca here, because I'm really curious about it. I love neuroscience. I love brain change. And I have to say, this idea of, like, as a working mom, going into a room and taking this drug with my bucket and vomiting, like, I would rather pierce the veil with my meditation practice. So, can you sell me on this? Like, I want to really understand the intention around taking ayahuasca, for instance.
Yeah. So there's an innate intelligence to that vine, and the combination of the vine and the leaf, which has the DMT. So it's a combination of two amazing plants and a few other herbs in there, potentially, depending on how the shaman puts it together. But there's an intelligence that guides you when you do an ayahuasca ceremony. And it's I do plenty of meditation, and I've yet to hit the state of magic and divinity that I've hit under those substances. And they allow you to, and they guide you through the work of doing the thing that you need. Each time you do it, it's different, and it's life altering. It allows you to see yourself in a different way. It allows you to see nature and the universe and the magic and divinity of life in a way that I have yet to experience, through just meditation. I've hit, those moments of enlightenment and samadhi in meditation, but there's something about communing with that plant spirit that is so special that it's really hard to, there's a lack of language to describe what happens when you enter that state,
I got a couple things on that, Larry. One is where I'm going to disagree slightly, not necessarily with what you're saying, but with how culture uses these things, in that it's not about the experience, it's about being able to live there. It's not the program, it's the operating system, right? So, a lot of people are kind of experience junkies, going like, oh my God, that was so mind expanding and liberating. What a great thing. Let's do it again this weekend. And my training, I'm very, very familiar with what you're talking about, because you get there and you're like, this is so beautiful. I'm so, in that moment, and you're like, God, these are great mushrooms. And I remember being, or DMT or whatever, and I remember being in that state and literally hearing from my higher self that, dude, if you ever want to come back here, you got to find your way on your own, right? And so that's when I went and became a monk and did this for several, since then, and meditated and found it. Not to say that the glimpses aren't important when we forget. And I think that's where the abuse is kind of picked up, is where people go like on this string of pearls from experience to experience, wanting kind of bigger and flashier experiences. And that's, I think, where the danger is, because people miss that it's a teacher, it's like a beacon of light to have you walk to it instead of, having you live there.
Yeah, and it's not recreational. I mean, it's not something. I don't know anyone that walks into that space of DMT or ayahuasca and goes, "Woohoo! I can't wait!" Right? You're going in there like trembling because Mama Aya is going to show you some shit.
Yep.
Right, and you don't know what it's going to be, and she brings up a lot of amazing things, but each time it's like, brace yourself, and you're not coming out of that and going, okay, let's do it again tomorrow. You want to reintegrate. And a lot of those experiences that I've had, whether it's on, heroic dose of mushrooms or whatever, I've always come out of them and, there was a time of deep introspection and, reassimilation into, wow, that was incredible. What did I learn? And where do I go from here? And in a lot of ways, it's helped me, on my path that I'm on now. It's made me a better person, and at the end of the day, that's the reason we do these things, so we can evolve as human beings, and and enter this magical, weird space we call life.
That's good. That's really good. Now, this reminds me of a Carlos Castaneda quote about meeting the plant energy in the middle. Like how do you receive the plant energy? And again, I happen to favor things like rhodiola and L-theanine, and
I'm with you.
So tell us a little bit more about some of these entheogens, and what do you do to prepare to meet them in the middle?
So, I mean, when you do these things, you want to cleanse, you want to make sure your body's clear, you want to get into a meditative state, because when you're in this experience, it's asking you to release and receive. And the best thing you can do is just engage the flow and get yourself out of it, get your mind and ego out of it, and just surrender, completely surrender to the experience. And when you do that, and when you're allowed, when you're ready to do that, that's when magic happens. And that's when you get the downloads.
There was, I think it was Terrence McKenna, when asked about ayahuasca, said, "No, that ain't no Saturday night kind of drug. You need to read a good 3,000 to 5,000 books before you try that shit." And it's because it is so cathartic. It is because it rattles your foundation. I want to tell a quick story that I was telling Sara at dinner the other night. A guy named Jeremy Narby. I think this is really relevant for our listeners, just to kind of tie in why this is such a strong area of interest. Narby was an anthropologist who was studying medicinal plants and kind of their origins. And these biotech firms, these pharmaceuticals, would go out to the Amazon and be like, "All right, Chief, what do you got for headaches?" And Chief would go pick 12 plants and do their thing and kind of brew up this thing, and the guy would take it and be like, "Wow, that really did cure my headache. That's awesome." And they'd go off and replicate it and turn it into some headache medicine. And then every time they asked him, "Hey, how did you figure out how to take all those plants and put them in those proportions and do it in just that way to get this cure?" The answer was always, without ever failing, "The plants told us."
Yeah.
And so they'd go, "Oh, you stupid Indians, whatever, give us the drugs." And they'd leave. And so Narby said, "Why don't we take this at face value for a second and ask them what the heck they're talking about?" And when he did so, the medicine men said, "Really, you really want to know?" He said, "Yeah, I want to know." He said, "Great, come to ceremony." And then they would go into ayahuasca ceremony, and all of a sudden, dude's sitting there going, "Holy crap, the plants are talking to me." And he found, and he postulated that there was this because they call it the cosmic serpent, that there was this very intricate form of communication between our own DNA unraveling and raveling with this kind of photon-based, light-based communication, and kind of the emanation or our manifestation as people. And so it became this huge thing, and it's a big field of study. For our listeners who are like, okay, this is kind of like a deep-end show here, there's a lot of smart people looking at this stuff for good reason.
Yeah. Well, a lot of the thing that you're watching this on, the technology that we're using was created out of a lot of LSD use.
Steve Jobs.
Well, all of them, wasn't it? I mean, it came out of people taking LSD and in their, in these visions, seeing circuit boards and, coming out of that and creating it. What we think we know about reality is like this much, and we walk around with our chest out going, I got the answer, and you just go in ceremony one time and get humbled.
So, Larry, I want to go back to something you said about surrender, because I think this is such a juicy topic, even for a square like me. And I think, maybe part of my psychology is that it's hard to surrender to the idea that I need some of this, plant energy in my life. It's hard for me to surrender, even though I know from the Eastern traditions, the wisdom of the East, that surrender is the answer to almost everything, right? So can you talk a little bit about surrender and, what comes up for you, especially dealing with someone like me who's a little more restrictive in terms of drug use?
Well, it's not. I mean, it's not for everyone. If you feel called to it, then by all means, do it and do it in the right way. As far as surrendering goes, the messages that I get from it, it's you need to surrender in life as you do in these states. Whether it's in meditation, you got to surrender and get your mind out of it. Whether it's in Qigong or Tai Chi or any martial art, it's about engaging flow. And by engaging flow, you're literally surrendering into that moment, right? So the last time I did an ayahuasca session, it was very clear to me that, as screwed up as things appear to be, everything's in the right place. And all you need to do is surrender to doing what you're doing and be in flow and be open, and the rest will come, right? And I truly believe that if we, continue to, be open, work on ourselves, try to become better human beings, whatever that means, then the universe will provide. And that to me is like the definition of surrender, is just being in the flow and living life and enjoying the moments that we have and being awake to all possibility.
That's great. So follow-up question is that I also have an addict personality. So I want to just, bring in the conversation to talk about addiction. I feel like anything that's worth doing, it's worth overdoing. It's just kind of how I roll. So what do you say to addicts, as you talk about entheogens? What's the word for the addict?
Well, I'd say if you have an addictive personality, or if you're abusing alcohol, whatever it is, whatever you're abusing, there's a reason you're abusing it, right? And it's important to find that reason. So there's been a lot of studies and a lot of people going through a substance called iboga. And iboga is known to get rid of addiction. And it gets rid of addiction because it makes you face you. And makes you face you in a very raw way. When you come out of this experience, I personally haven't tried iboga, but from what I've researched and read and the experiences that I've heard, you literally come out of there like shook to the core. And you understand why you do the things that you do and feel, a lot of these things are accepting you as you, right? So a lot of people become addictive or have addictive personalities because they like it and they want to attach to it and go and just continue using that thing. These things give you a different perspective on that and actually empower you to say, I got it. I don't need that. Right? And they're tools. They're tools to break away from addiction.
Well said. This whole class of entheogens has been used over and over again to break addictions, Sara. And I'll hook you up with some of the research on that end, just so you can kind of wrap your big, beautiful brain around it. Because it is there. And what's happening is it's not popular, so it's not getting the big funding dollars from the big bad boys that give the money to the universities. But the data is there, and it's very interesting what's happening in that space. And like Larry said when we first started, there is a renaissance. There's a ton of research starting to happen around this because people are like, look at the data. This crap works, right? It's working, so why are we not looking at it? And so we're kind of at this place now where healthcare costs are spiraling and people can't find meaning in life, and everyone's so confused and lost in the modern world. And people are being forced to look at some of this stuff again and say, wait a minute, this was working in the 60s and we left it. Why? right? And yes, there's room for abuse in everything, but let's talk about pharmaceuticals and pain medicines being abused currently, and it, this stuff pales in comparison to how many people are taking Vicodin for fun.
Totally. And I think it's a necessary thing for most people to do, because as a culture, we're ill, right? We're like, as a whole, we're mentally ill. We're doing shit that makes no sense. We're just going through the motions unconsciously and doing, like, we're killing, the planet that we live on. So I think part of it, not to get woo-woo, but I believe that the consciousness of the planet, the Gaia, is bringing these things, up. And that's why more and more people are using them, because we're at a place where we're either gonna, evolve into a greater thing or destroy ourselves.
Hear, hear.
Love that. I love how we got back to the environment and the earth. So, Larry, this has been such an amazing conversation. I want to recap. I'm putting on the glasses because I'm having a sexy librarian moment. Are you with me?
I wish I had my glasses.
Okay, so I think I've got 12 points here. I'm going to go through them fast. Number 1, Larry, you talked about the ego dampening effects of plant medicines and how we need to reset the meme about drugs. Number 2, we don't have a drug problem, we have an education problem. Are you using drugs to expand your consciousness or to check out? Number 3, you talked about entheogens being part of the toolbox, and maybe you said this, Pedram, how profoundly important they are to reconcile what's true versus what's bullshit. Number 4, you talked about setting the intention whenever you use an entheogen, the importance of the intention. Number 5, you mentioned drugs that reinforce the ego, some of our favorite addictions like alcohol and caffeine, Coke, versus drugs that remove the ego, which is the entheogens. Number 6, there's this innate intelligence of the ayahuasca vine. I really like that, the DMT, and how it allows you to see yourself and nature in a new communion, where you're connected to the spirituality of the plant. Number 7, it's not about the experience, and this is a Pedramism. Dude, if you want to come back here, when you're in an entheogen experience, you need to find it your way on your own. I really like that point. Number 8, Larry, you talked about reintegration, reassimilation, which I think is so interesting. I feel like life is this series of deconstructing, reconstructing, and you brought in the idea of the plant energy helping us with that. Number 9, how to prepare. You talked about surrender, the release and receive piece of this journey. Number 10 was the Jeremy Narby story. Love that one, Pedram. Number 11, addiction. There's a reason for addiction. There's tools to deal with it. You mentioned Iboga. And then finally, this point about how, as a culture, we are illin. Like, we're killing the planet, and the planet is bringing forward these different tools that are available to us, evolve or die.
Nailed it.
Is she good?
Yeah, I mean, that's the crux of it, And I think if there's one thing I want people to think about is that meme of drugs and the charge that it has in our minds. What is it, right? It's everything. It's anything that you put into your body that creates a chemical reaction. It just so happens that these other things do some weird shit to you. Like LSD is no longer present in our body an hour after you take it, yet the experience goes on for 8 or 9 hours. And it's a profoundly deep one. What's going on? We need to study these things as a society, what's going on with them. There's a lot of things that we can learn from these things, and to close ourselves off is a dangerous thing. And we've done that for a long time, and I'm excited to see the renaissance happening into probing deeply within our minds so we can save ourselves from ourselves.
Love that.
Yeah.
Amen, brother.
Yeah.
Larry, Sara and I had a little argument last weekend. I guess we'll get into in the next show because we're running out of time here.
Yeah.
So you guys stay tuned for the next show so we could bicker about it. Larry, tell people how to find you.
BeWellBuzz.com. Yeah, we have another site called GeniusAwakening.com too, where we explore more personal development and entheogens and things like that as well.
Yes,
Yeah.
yes. Guys, great resource. Check them out. Larry Ostrovsky, awesome to have you, man. You're a warrior, and I appreciate you kind of, just pulling back the kimono and just being raw and honest about this, because I think a lot of people in the health and wellness space feel this way but are worried, right? It's just this stigma around it. And I think we got to just move these stigmas out and do whatever we can to help people help themselves.
I agree, and I appreciate you guys being open enough to actually talk about this sort of thing, because we need this conversation to happen. So I thank both of you for that, and thank you for having me on to share my experiences.
Oh, rock on, Larry. So happy to have you. Thanks a million.
Yeah. Thank you.
Thanks, everybody.
Cheers.